One thing I thought was kind of interesting, the news itself isn't interesting, but I thought maybe it could lead to an interesting discussion, which is there is a French company whose a couple of high-ranking people were recently indicted. I don't know what the criminal charges will be, but they were found guilty of creating a corporate culture so toxic that 35 employees killed themselves. And they were basically, they're going to get arrested or they're going to face punishment for this. And I thought that was interesting because the problem is one that from the outside is avoidable, which is you hate your job so much that you're going to kill yourself. You can get another job. But for these 35 people, it seemed inescapable, so much so that they killed themselves. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted to bring that up in case there's anybody listening or watching who feels like their circumstances are so terrible that they're suicidal or maybe just depressed or angry, as maybe hopefully a moment to pause and remind people that it's not as inescapable as you think. Mm-hmm. If you hate your relationship and you're thinking about killing yourself because your significant other is abusive, you can do everything in your power to get out. You can call the cops, you can move out, you can leave. You can, like, people didn't want to leave their jobs because they didn't want to not have a source of income. Yeah. So they killed themselves. I wish I could have grabbed each one of those people and just said, let's just try a month of no income. Yeah. Let's just try 1 month of quit today. Forget everything. You'll find food some other way, right? You'll go to family, you'll beg, you'll dance on the street. This isn't as inescapable as you think. And I just thought it was an interesting topic. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
I mean, of course, they always do. It reminds me of the book that I'm reading, or finished today. It's called The Soul of Money. And it talks a lot about one of the big underlying myths that makes people not give to charity, but also makes people sad, suicidal, all those other things, is the myth of scarcity. That there is not enough, that there is only one way, that it's got to be competitive. It's me or them. Mm-hmm. And if I lose the things that I have, I will never recover something to make up for it. Mm-hmm. And the book is really good because we naturally compare ourselves to the people in our similar circumstances. Yep. None of my friends are losing their jobs. I'm doomed. And this woman, I mean, has been to the streets of Calcutta with Mother Teresa, where people have nothing. And it really powerfully illustrates that abundance can be felt when there's no material goods around you. Yeah. Like when food is sparse. She has these just heartwarming stories of people giving their last loaf of bread with the belief that, oh no, like I always get enough. I always get enough. And it made me cry like 6 times. It was a great book.
Wow.
There was this
What's it called?
The Soul of Money.
Soul of Money.
It's too long by a third, like maybe even 2/3. Like if they just trimmed it down, I think it'd be better. But the one story that did make me cry was she's got 2 meetings in the same day, Chicago, New York. First one's in Chicago. It's this company that had a bad spat of PR. And so they need to donate. She's the founder of the Hunger Project, and they help people with hunger. Get them food and teach them. There's a whole other story there. But she goes to the very top, the rarefied air CEO. Yeah. She's like, the air is different, legitimately, at the top of this skyscraper. And we sit down. I tell him what we do. He's completely disinterested. And at the end, he reaches into a pre-printed check for $50,000, grumbles it across the table, and ushers me out in 13 minutes. Yeah. I get on an airplane. I fly back to New York, and I go to Harlem. And this is many years ago, even when Harlem was like not like a place that people hung out all the time. Yeah. It was
bad Harlem.
Not even bad, just like low income. And she goes, and they're in a basement in Harlem, and it's a bunch of community members, and she starts talking about, these people in India who have nothing. And she says, if you can give. And the one woman in the back stands up and says, money has never been like a river into my life. It's been a trickle at best. But whenever it comes in, I try to share what I have. So I'd like to give you. And she pulls out, 5s, 10s. She's like, this is my $50 that I was going to spend on food. But these people need it more. And then I'm going to cry. Everybody in the room gives money. And they go in and they fish out and they ask their friends. And it's 1s, it's 2s. And she says she got, $350 from them. And it was better than the 50. And so the story actually has a coda. So the next day, she says, I can't take this guy's money, even though it could make a huge difference. And she writes a letter, sends back the check to the guy and says, find an organization that you genuinely care about to do this, and thinks nothing of it. 10 or so years later, she gets a letter from him. He says, hey, you might not remember me. I've since retired from this job. and I've been reviewing my career, and only one day stands out in my mind, and that was when I got your letter, and it blew my world open because you weren't playing by the rules that everybody else played by. You didn't want money at any cost. It wasn't, every dollar wasn't the same to you. It mattered where it came from, and I've thought about it. It's impacted me, and I'd like to try to make amends for what I did. And then he wrote her a check for much, much more. She didn't say how much than she had originally gotten. But it's a great book. It powerfully demonstrates that, and I know this doesn't fit the economic view of things, but that every dollar is not created equal, that they come with intents, and that those intents can be felt years, months later in secondary effects, that if you were just to go, well, $50,000, that's X amount of wells, that's X amount of food, like we definitely need that. Or if you're in a business, you go, well, he's offering that money, even though he technically can't afford that thing that he's going to buy, like a dollar's a dollar, and he said he wants to give it to me. She powerfully, with anecdotes, illustrates that you can get more, there is enough, there is abundance, and if you take less today, share more today, it comes back. So it's a cool book. It definitely inspired me to think differently about the way that I have given money in the past. Yeah, because I've just written big numbers. And not been, I feel like I need to participate.
I'm doing this from a philosophically rational point of view.
That's exactly where it's been. It's like, if I do this, I'm whatever, morally clear. Like this is guilt money.
I'm not greedy.
Yes, exactly. So check it out. It's a good book. I recommend it.
Cool.
What were you saying before that reminded me of that? You were saying of the people who killed themselves.
The people who killed themselves, yeah. So this is a tangent related to that. I don't know if you have anything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I mean that story just made me. This book was good because it really it shows you some of the poorest of the poor, and it disrupts the scarcity mindset, right?
Which is I need this job so badly that rather than quit, I'll just kill myself.
And it's almost like if these people had an ability to interact or to become conscious of the poorest people in India, they wouldn't have killed themselves.
Yeah.
They would have seen the rich possibilities that life has, even when you don't have a lot. And like, not only might they have lived, they might have opened up in other ways.
So yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
Just if anyone's listening or watching and is in a down spot, it's less inescapable than you may imagine. Kind of related. I think this is more of a interesting political philosophical discussion. The reason that this culture for this company was so terrible is actually not because workers don't have rights in France. It's because they have so many rights. And so you can't fire someone, because if you fire them, apparently there's just an exorbitant amount of severance. So the reason, and this is not justifying what they did is terrible, but the reason they did it was because they were hoping people would quit. Because if you quit, you don't get your severance. So they were saying this is so punitive to fire these people that we'll just try to create a culture that makes them leave voluntarily. And I think that's an interesting thing to think about, because a lot of times I see people critiquing the current system of the US, saying we should change this, we should be more libertarian, we should be more socialist, whatever it is, both sides. And I think people should maybe just recognize that these systems are complicated and there's a lot of second and third order effects to the changes you want. So public healthcare for everyone, I'm totally game in theory. What does that mean? One hospital per city? What will the quality of the healthcare be, et cetera? And I don't want to dwell on it, but I just think it's interesting to me, and I think maybe interesting to other people. These suicides happened because the government of France says if you fire someone, you have to give them a bunch of money.
Which
and these people,
a different incentive,
where they went, okay, well, we're just going to try to get them to quit. And I'm not justifying what they did. I'm just pointing out that sometimes you don't get the results you're hoping for when you make systemic changes to governments.
Interesting. Do you have any idea what the toxicity was, either you or Justin? Like, I'd be super curious.
Like what they were doing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How do you get 30? I guess it could.
Well, I read about. So this again, I read the comments of the article, right? So these are not the people who killed themselves, obviously, but they're people from France or from other places who dealt with this, and they say that a lot of times it'll be emotional abuse, like you suck at this, blah blah blah, or it'll just be give them no work at all. And one guy was saying, I had nothing to do for 8 hours a day, and I've never been so depressed. You think it's going to be awesome because, I play on the internet and that's fun for 3 days. He says, when they took me from having a call, because he's customer service, a call every 10 minutes or so, to 3 calls a day that were 10 minutes long, and then 7.5 hours of doing nothing, I've never entered into such a depression.
Wow.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting.
I'd be really fascinated because obviously, I would just like to know
What are
more
they
about
doing?
that. Because it does, if this is what you need to do to get a higher percentage of people to kill themselves, the inverse of
opposite,
that would be something that could imaginably take people out of a depression.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, the inverse from what I could gather is two things. One, having a community and a team that you like, having a boss that treats you well, and in coworkers that you enjoy spending time with, and work that you find rewarding
and meaningful.
So the worst thing actually isn't doing, and I've done this actually, it's not doing manual labor. It's doing nothing. It's being forced to sit and stare at a wall for 8 hours.
I mean, solitary is within jail. That's the punishment you give to someone in jail.
No, I landscaped, and it's not the funnest thing in the world. A bee stung me in the eye. I had a lot of calluses and cuts, but time does go. And there was one other guy I worked with, and I liked talking to him. And yeah, that's better than if I had to sit in the truck alone while he did the landscaping.
Yeah.
And just be alone for 8 hours. So yeah, I think that's the key to having a good job appears to be work with people you like and do something where you enjoy what you do and you like the cause that you're working towards. You know, if you're a carpenter because you like working with your hands and you can be proud of the stuff you create afterwards, that's actually going to make you really happy relative to if you like working with your hands but you try to go be an investment banker because it makes more money.
Yeah.
You'll hate it.
Well, dude, speaking of second order effects, that's one of the things that this Soul of Money book talks about. Is it talks about Live Aid. It's like we all got together and we had a concert and we raised $50 million and we dumped it on Ethiopia. Here's stuff. And then I came back to Ethiopia, whatever, 6-7 years later, and nothing had changed. Like, in fact, if according to this woman, the only thing that had changed is that people felt helpless. They felt like unless we get another handout, we're doomed. And so what she advocates for, and I think the microcosm is the family unit. Like if you just give your kid $10 million, you may cripple him.
Yeah.
But if you can instead offer opportunities in which this person can learn, develop skills, succeed, get their hand held at the beginning and then taken away, and then with a little bit more coaching, that's the type of person that becomes self-sufficient.
You want to help them be the guy that says, I did this all myself while growing up in an upper middle class society with good public schools and good roads. That's what you're trying to, I built this from the ground up. Once I was carried to the finish line. That's what you're trying to create.
Well, I mean, and it's interesting. She talks about, so she goes to Ethiopia and what can we do here? And a lot of the people that wind up making the biggest impact are those that then start micro charities within their own country. And so that, the Grameen Bank, which was a guy, I believe his name is Yusuf Muhammad or Muhammad, I don't know his name, who started doing micro loans to women so that they could start sewing or whatever little thing they wanted to do. When these people got involved and were trying to help other people, but not in a way that was with a handout, with a way that was like, no, you got to pay me back. They actually did better than strict, oh, here's a gift, I'll see you never. You know what I mean? Which is kind of like the deadbeat dad that shows up. He's built this giant business. He shows up, he gives you a ton of money and then disappears for 5 years. Like that person is going to struggle more than someone who had a middle-class parent that participated with them. And I thought that was really interesting. And I do think the caveat there is that there are certainly things, and I think Charity Water falls into this, like just help people get water. You know what I mean? Like whether or not they build the well, I think that can be valuable. But if you are starving to death or don't have oxygen or water or something like that, keeping you alive can be a valuable thing to do.
Well, they said that one of the most beneficial charities per dollar is a charity that cures parasites.
Yep.
Because it doesn't fix your hunger. It doesn't give you money. But what it does, which I have never thought of, is when you're a kid in school in Africa and you get a parasite that takes you out for a couple months, you're behind forever. Basically, you fall behind that year and then your grades aren't good. You have to get held back or you're behind the next year. And they said that by just giving people these quick cures that we have in America,
30-cent pills,
for that make the parasites die so the kid can stay in school, that has a tremendous trickle-down effect in his life, which is interesting because you're just enabling him to learn and function. So curing that kind of stuff, taking care of the problems that knock out your ability to basically fend for yourself or learn to fend for yourself. That's the most helpful stuff.
I think that's William McCaskill. I think it's Doing Good Better. It's the book on effective altruism where he talks about all these different things.
I thought the book was just called Effective Altruism.
It might be effective. I thought it was Doing Good Better. I believe it's William McCaskill. I don't remember. It's been a year plus since I've read it. But that's struck me as well.
Yeah.
Just like, interesting. Like enabling people to help themselves. And then, of course, this is the difficulty of being a parent, which is, when do I step in and bail this kid out? And when do I,
Do you know what happened? Do you know what kind of happened to me? I got mono. I don't know if you know this. I got mono in high school. And they say, here's the curriculum, teach yourself. But I had mono. I was completely couch ridden, right? So I get back and, I managed to catch up in every subject except for physics. And in physics, I take a test. I was an A student. I take a test and I fail it. I think just straight up F it. And the teacher goes, listen, I get it. You tried to teach yourself for a month about these complicated things. I'm going to give you a retest, different questions, but same concepts a week later. Okay. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I got this. I stay after school because I still have to do my regular class. Take it again. C something, like C minus. And I only ever gotten A's. And she just pulls me aside. She goes, listen, I've had health issues. I'm just going to, you get a 0 out of 0 on this. It's not going to affect your grade. Just start attending class again and learn from me, because you clearly can't teach yourself physics. So I had a similar thing. If I had a less understanding teacher, that was my senior year, so I was probably already in college, but you can imagine that happens your sophomore or junior year, less understanding teacher. I would have been screwed. I could not possibly teach myself that stuff for some reason.
And well, then it's tough. And then you hear these stories, and I believe them, of teachers who go super hard on people, who the hardest teacher they ever had, who doesn't take it, they get sick, and they say, no, work anyway.
Oh, yeah, but I was a nerd, dude. I was sitting at the front of the class taking note, like...
Oh, I'm not saying that I believe you when you say that was appropriate for you. The difficult...
Oh, yeah. I'm saying I think the reason she did that is because prior to that, I had aced everything and was a loser. I was just sitting there in the front with glasses and big eyes, excited about physics. So I think she's like, I don't need to tough love this kid.
Yeah, that's the difficult question. And I think you can have the same situation with two different people with two different backgrounds. You go, no, this one needs to be told to buckle down, and this one needs a break. And that's, I think, what's tough about not just charity, but being a parent.
Parenting, dude, parenting's so hard. I've not been a parent, but the older I get, the more I realize it's so hard.
Well, what you do for me, my parents gave me such a long leash, because I was like, I'm going to sleep at Ben's, we're going to go play Risk. And we would stay up all night and play Risk.
Yeah.
And so I'm 17, 18, and then my brother and sister are younger. Like, I'm going to go have a sleepover. And what do you know? They're drinking. And not that drinking is the worst thing in the world, and kids survive that phase. But you could do the same exact thing with two different people and get two wildly different results.
Sure.
I paved such an easy path for my brother and sister.
Yeah.
They had such a long leash of trust to go on because I did nothing. And then they ruined it. Lucky nobody came after that.
Yeah. That's all I got, man.